When looking at the American Revolution and the American Civil War, you will realize the wars are similar. For the American Revolution, the British was a heavy favorite over the colonies, and for the Civil War, the North or the Union was a heavy favorite over the South or the Confederacy. In each of these wars, the underdogs did better than expected. In the American Revolution, the colonies won the war, and in the Civil War, the South gave the North a lot better fight than expected. The colonies and the South both used their advantages, war strategies, and military decisions to put themselves in the best position possible to win the war. They both had better causes than the opposing side, home field advantage, and resourceful generals. For war strategies, they both planned on fighting a defensive war and getting European allies. For military decisions and tactics, the colonies chose to fight defensively and use Native American tactics, which was a hit and run strategy, which was considered unpopular in war for the British. For the South, they could fight defensively, which they planned on fighting at the beginning of the war, or fight offensively. The South had way more success fighting defensively. Lexington and Concord, the first battle of the American Revolution, April 1775. In this battle, the Americans played a defensive battle. The British came to Lexington and Concord for war supplies. The Americans were attacked in Lexington. The little troops they had at the time were pushed back by the British to Concord. Then, after the British salvaged what little there was for supplies, they made their way back to Lexington. After arriving at Lexington, they were ambushed by Union men. They shot from behind trees, rocks, and buildings. They took the British by surprise and completely annihilated them. This was the beginning to guerrilla warfare. The South had skills that made them good soldiers, many of the best officers in the United States. Bunker Hill, the first major win for the British on June 16, 1775. Colonel William Prescott landed in the Charlestown Peninsula, then marched to Breed's Hill. As the British advanced, they were told not to shoot until they saw the whites of the Americans' eyes. After two brigades attacked the American line, the British were low on ammo, so they proceeded to fight hand-to-hand combat. The Americans, being outnumbered, were forced to retreat. The Americans used home field advantage and a newly found technique, guerrilla warfare. The first Bull Run. The first battle of the Bull Run was fought on July 21, 1861. After fighting on a defensive war for most of the day, the South rallied and were able to send the Union into a chaotic retreat towards Washington. The Confederate victory gave the South a surge of confidence and shocked many in the North who realized the war would not be won as easily as they had hoped. The North had many people to grow food and to do work in factories making supplies. They had more than 70% of the nation's rail lines and had a strong navy and a large fleet of private trading ships. The South, defending their homeland, gave them a strong reason to fight.
Gettysburg was known as the bloodiest battle and the turning point of the war. On May 1863, Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army invades Gettysburg to conquer the city. Since the South is losing the war at the time, unfortunately, Lee's second invasion on the North failed. The North had a bigger population, they were more industrialized, and had access to more resources. The South had a better military. They also had better generals, and a lot of countries supported them more than they did in the North. Vicksburg was the key to losing the war. The Anaconda Plan was starting to work. The North surrounded the South in Vicksburg and cut off all the resources and supplies to make them surrender. On July 4th, Vicksburg surrendered after a prolonged siege operations.